After their recovery mission was thwarted by a devastating surprise attack, the Ultramarines have mobilized in retaliation to the Mephrit uprising. Relics from Damnos are now firmly in the hands and claws of the Necron forces, and the Emperor's finest have but one chance left to retrieve this lost archaeotech. The Adeptus Astartes return with fresh interpretation of their Codex, unmatched bolter discipline, and a hunger for revenge. Before they can make a strike on the Necron stronghold, they must first stake their claim on this forgotten moon, the Mephrit Exclave, Bane of Ultramar, henceforth known as Traxides.
Hi everyone, Guy and Ant here from Midwinter Minis, back for our 500-point rematch of Space Marines versus Necrons. We decided to go for a sort of winner stays on setup, so my Necron force will remain unchanged since last time, but Ant's Space Marine force has been tailor-made to take care of my pesky Necrons. So just to recap, my 499-point Necron force is a Cryptek, and he's armed with the Veil of Darkness, Chronometron, Staff of Light, and his Warlord trait is Merciless Tyrant. I have 10 Immortals with Tesla Carbines, 10 Necron Warriors, and 3 Canoptek Wraiths. And if you watched the last episode, you'll know that they are the Mephrit Dynasty, so I get +1 AP at half range.
So this time I've made a few adjustments to my Ultramarines force. First up, I've got a captain in Gravis armour, so he's my Warlord, and his Warlord trait is Iron Resolve, which will give him an additional wound, and he's carrying the relic of the Armour Indomitus again, just because it's too good not to take. Next up, I've got a Primaris Lieutenant, or is it a Lieutenant? It's a Lieutenant. And then I've got 3 5-man squads of Intercessors, and they're all packing the standard rapid-fire bolt rifle. And lastly, I've got 3 bikes. Broom broom. So they've also got the rapid-fire twin bolt gun, bringing me a heck of a lot of rapid fire. Woo! So last time I was using the old Codex, but now we've got some funky new rules, which means I'm using the new Codex, and we've got some combat doctrines in play, and we've also got this funky little rapid fire rule as well.
So slightly different from last time, we are using a 4x4 table setup. And we've cordoned off 1 foot at the edge of each table using some terrain and some debris just to close in the gap slightly. So for this scenario, we'll be deploying in the Vanguard Strike map, which basically means we're setting up in diagonal corners of the board. And for the mission, we'll be using the classic objective Beachhead, which basically means there's an objective in the center, an objective in both deployment zones. The game will last 4 turns, and at the end of turn 2, 3, and 4, we'll score points if we hold them. The objective in our own zones will be worth 1, the objective in the no man's land will be worth 2, and the objective in the enemy's deployment zone will be worth 3 points. If any of those objectives are contested, even if the units have special rules that would otherwise make them theirs, we will score no points. First Blood, Linebreaker, and Slay the Warlord will all be in play in this mission. And the winner will obviously be the one with the most points at the end of turn 4, or maybe the only one with any models left. And because this is just a friendly narrative game, we're going to take turns setting up our models in our deployment zones, which we'll just choose rather than roll off for, and then we'll roll off to decide who goes first. So just to clarify, my Necron force is a simple patrol, but Ant's Space Marines are a battalion. So he will have 8 command points to play with, where I only have a measly 3. So Ant definitely has the tactical advantage in this game.
That sounds like losers talk to me. Laying the foundations of loss.
So we quickly set up. My Immortals and my Cryptek are hiding away in the corner away from all that bolter fire. My Warriors are up on that building, also holding the objective. And my Wraiths are poised just at the starting line, ready to hopefully swoop around that corner and start hacking the Space Marines to bits.
I've conveniently positioned most of my force behind a building in some cover. Tactically, I'm looking to kind of try and get around them in 2 different angles from a couple of different sides. The old classic pincer movement.
So we roll to see who goes first. I'm the blue dice, and I obviously got a 6 compared to a 1. There's no debating that one, but I think I'm actually going to let Ant go first, because I'm entirely out of range at the moment, and I'd like to get him a little bit closer.
So using the new combat doctrines for my Ultramarines means that they start on the Devastator doctrine, which means their heavy weapons and grenades get -1 additional AP. I haven't got any heavy weapons, so I'm waiting out until turn 2 when I can actually switch it over to the tactical doctrine so that all of my rapid fire guns are going to get an extra -1 AP.
Okay, so Ultramarines turn 1. In Ant's movement phase, he's going to move his bikes and one of the Intercessor squads up along the far flank, but he's just going to leave the rest of his forces where they are, just to tempt me a little bit closer. So Ant rolls to advance his bikes and scores a 5, letting him zoom his bikes up next to that Galvanic Magnavent. He also rolls to advance his Intercessors, but only rolls a 1, so they just shimmy up a little bit more. He pulls the rest of his Intercessors in towards that building, hiding them from any fire, but doesn't move his Warlord for some reason, and I think he's maybe got a tactic up his sleeve. Now, moving on to the shooting phase, and the reason his Warlords stay put becomes clear. Ant spends 3 of his command points to play the Orbital Bombardment stratagem. Basically, it means if the Warlord doesn't move or shoot any of his weapons, he can choose a spot anywhere on the map and basically blow things near it to smithereens. Any units that wind up within D6 inches of the place he selects will receive D3 mortal wounds on a 4+, so that could be problematic. So Ant rolls to the distance and scores 6, so that's definitely catching the Warriors and the Wraiths. So Ant rolls to cause mortal wounds to the Immortals, and fails unfortunately, and now he rolls to cause mortal wounds to the Wraiths, and he fails with a 2, but he's pretty desperate to get rid of those Wraiths because they caused some pretty big problems for him last time, so he uses a command point to re-roll that, and still scores a 2. What a nightmare. Good for me though. So that unfortunately pretty ineffective orbital bombardment has cost Ant 4 command points in the first shooting phase of the game, so things are looking a little bit more level now. Just to round off the shooting phase, one of Ant's bikes is within 24 inches of the warriors that are on top of that building, so he's going to take some shots at them. So Ant rolls 2 dice, needing 2s to hit, scores 2 hits, and then 4s to wound, and he scores 1 wound. Now the way we generally play our friendly games is that if units are on top of buildings, it basically counts as ruins, so these will get a +1 to their armor save, so I'll be saving this on a 3+. And on a failed roll of a 2, we got the first casualty of the game, so one of those warriors is out. So with nothing in charge range, that is the end of Ultramarines turn 1. Not hugely effective, but that was my sneaky hope all along by letting him go first.
So onto Necrons, turn 1. Guy's Necron warriors are going to do the reanimation protocol, and Guy needs a 5 in order to actually bring that dead one back to life, and he scores a 2, so he's staying dead. Guy is going to be pushing his Wraiths further up towards my force, so he's chosen to advance them, and he's got a 5. Obviously they're going on top of a building, which means they're going to have to take in that vertical movement into consideration as well. Guy chooses to leave his warriors exactly where they are, perched atop that building, still within range of that objective marker. Guy's moved his Cryptek and his Immortals to within 9 inches of me. Doesn't need to roll any dice or anything, it's this veil of darkness, so that's quite threatening and easy for Guy to do. So yeah, gonna have to deal with that somehow. So Guy's got 2 warriors within range, so they're going to try and get off a couple of shots against the bikes, and needing 3s to hit. It hits twice. But Guy needs his 5s in order to wound because of the strength 4 of the Gauss Flayer versus the toughness 5 of them bikes. Unfortunately, Guy only rolls 4s, so fails to wound in this case. So next up, it's the Immortals to shoot into the squad of Intercessors. So hitting on 3s, but the Tesla Carbines also got this other rule, which says that on a roll of a 6, it causes an additional 3 hits. Of course it does. And Guy's rolled 6 6s, which, yeah, that's a few extra hits. So with strength 5 on the Tesla Carbine and the toughness 4 of the Intercessors, Guy only needs 3s in order to actually wound. So that's 19 wounds that actually go through, and because it's Mephrit Dynasty, it means that they are actually AP -1 at half range, so that's fun. Unfortunately, I roll 19 dice to try and get 4s, and I don't get nearly enough at all. So yeah, that's 1 dead unit, and that's first blood to Guy and the Necrons. So next up, Guy's going to be shooting the Cryptek Staff of Light at my Warlord. Now, although he's actually out of range, because of the Warlord trait Merciless Tyrant, the Cryptek gets another 6 inches to his range on his Staff of Light. So that's 3 shots, needing 3s to hit, and Guy hits twice. So Strength 5 versus Toughness 5 with the Gravis armor captain, and Guy needs 4s to wound, scores 2 wounds. So now I need to make the saves. I'm going to have to revert to the captain's 4-up invuln, so I save 1, but 1 goes through. And just with 1 damage, that's 1 wound off. But that's okay, because it's the additional wound that the captain had anyway. That still means he's got 7 wounds left, and with no units inside charging range, that means that is the end of Necron's turn 1. The Necron's there securing a valuable point for First Blood.
At the start of Ultramarines turn 2, Ant is going to be changing the combat doctrines from Devastator to Tactical. So basically that means all rapid fire weapons now have an AP of -1, so they'll be much more effective at clearing out some of my Necrons. Well, that's what he hopes. At the start of the Ultramarines movement phase, Ant is going to move his bikes a little bit closer to the warriors to try and take some of them out. He's going to shimmy the furthest away Intercessor squad a little bit closer to those warriors so they'll be in range, but also to the Wraiths just in case. And then he's going to move the remaining squad of Intercessors up on top of the building to be closer to that objective, so he scores it at the end of this turn, but also to benefit from the +1 save it'll give him. And then he's going to move his HQ units back so they are not the closest units to my Necrons, just in case I get any shots off at them. Moving on to the shooting phase, one of those bikes is within rapid fire range, so it'll be doing 4 shots with its bolter, and the 2 bikes at the back will be doing 2 each, so that's 8 shots altogether. Needing 3s to hit and only misses on 1, so 7 shots go through, and 4s against 4s will need 4s to wound. And slightly unluckier rolling this time, he scores 3 wounds. And because they're just normal bolt guns, they have AP -1 because of this doctrine that he's just played, so that'll negate the +1 save I get for being on the cover. So just a 4-up save. I failed on 2 of those dice, so 2 of those Necrons are now toast. So those rooftop Intercessors are going to be targeting my Immortals down below. Now, because of the nearby Lieutenant and the Captain, Ant will get to reroll 1s for hitting and wounding. So 10 dice coming in, and he rolls 1-1 and rerolls it into a hit. So all of those 10 shots make their mark. Now, no 1s unfortunately to reroll, but he does make 6 of those wounds. So 6 saves for me to make with -2 AP. 5s needed to save. Luckily enough, I actually make 3 of them, so 3 Immortals are dead. But hopefully they'll come back in the next reanimation phase. Ho ho ho. So the Lieutenant is now going to target the Immortals with his master-crafted auto bolt rifle, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s all the way. So 3 shots coming in, 2 make their mark, 1 is a 1, so he gets to re-roll it, but still fails. So now we're trying to wound with those 2 dice, and one of them rolls a 1, so he gets to re-roll that, but fails again, so 1 wound goes through. With a 2, I fail that save, and another one of those Immortals bites the dust. So the Captain is unable to shoot because he only has 12-inch pistol range on his weapons, and he's 14 inches away. Now it's time for the central unit of Intercessors to choose their target, and Ant chooses to target the Immortals. 5 shots coming in, hitting on 3s, and only 2 go through. Now with equal strength and toughness, they'll need 4s to wound, and 1 of those goes through. And because they have an AP of -2 now with this combat doctrine, I'll need a 5+ to save it. And on a 4, I fail. So another one of those Immortals is dead. So that's the end of the Ultramarines shooting phase, and Ant is choosing to bypass the charge phase because he doesn't really want to face all that overwatch from those Tesla Carbines. So because we're now on turn 2, Ant will score 1 victory point because he is in control of the objective that's in his deployment zone, bringing his total victory points up to 1.
Guy needs to roll for morale for his Immortals. They lost 5, so leadership 10. On a 5 or a 6, that means another one's going to run away. Luckily, everything is good. So it's the beginning of Necron's turn 2, and Guy needs to roll for his reanimation protocol. So he's going to roll for the Immortals, and because the Cryptek is nearby, it means that any Immortals are going to be coming back on a 4 rather than a 5. So Guy rolls for the 5 that was slain, and 3 are coming back. So now I need to roll for the warriors that were destroyed, and they're going to be coming back on a 5. And out of the 3, only 1 is coming back. So first off in the Necron's movement phase, Guy's going to try and move his Wraiths down to try and take that objective in the centre of the board. And unfortunately Guy rolls a 2 first time around, but I've got a sneaky suspicion he's going to command point roll this. So Guy uses a command point, one of the precious 3 that he has, and unfortunately he only gets a 1. That's worse than what it was before, so they're not going to be in range of that objective. Next Guy's just going to shift his warriors around ever so slightly so he can try and get as many as possible within rapid fire range, while still staying within 2-inch unit coherency. So Guy needs to also make sure that he's keeping close to that objective so he can continue to score the points. So next up, the Immortals are going to be pushing a little further up the board, just so they can make sure that we're within half range of their weaponry. And the Cryptek is also then moving up to join them. The merry band of Necrons. So whilst they got a little bit closer to it, the Wraiths are still 5 inches away from that objective. Next, let's go on to the shooting phase. Guy's going to be shooting his warriors at the bike squad that are zooming towards him. So Guy's managed to get 4 in rapid fire range and 3 aren't in rapid fire range, and 1 is still hiding out behind the building in order to keep close to that objective. So Guy's got 11 shots coming in, hitting on 3s, wounding on 5. So 6 hits managed to hit the mark, and now 5s to wound. Unfortunately, Guy's only scored 1 wound that time. With -2 due to the Mephrit Dynasty being at half range, I'm going to need a 5 up in order to actually stave off that wound. Luckily, I roll a 6, so the biker is safe. Next up are the Immortals. They're going to be shooting at those Intercessors on top of the roof. So that is 8 Immortals. They get 2 shots each, and luckily that time, no 6s. Thank you. So from those 16 shots come 10 hits, but vitally, no 6s. So strength 5 of a Tesla Carbine versus the toughness 4 of the Intercessors there. So Guy's going to need 3s to wound. So they get AP -1 due to being in half range, which means that's going to negate the +1 that the Intercessors are going to be getting for being on top of the roof, which means I'm going to need 3s again to save. I managed to save 2 wounds, but 1 I'm just going to let go through. So next up, the Cryptek's going to be shooting his Staff of Light. Due to the Warlord trait of Merciless Tyrant, the Cryptek's going to get to target the Warlord. And so even though he's a character and he's not the closest model, Merciless Tyrant doesn't care. 3 shots from the Staff of Light coming in, hitting on 3s. So that's all of them hitting. So the Staff of Light is strength 5 and it's toughness 5 on the captain, so 4's needed. And all 4 wound. So with AP -2, I'm going to revert to the 4-up save on the captain's Gravis armour. So with only 1 wound being saved, that's 2 wounds that are going to be going through to the captain. So even though the Immortals are actually within charging distance, Guy's choosing not to charge his Immortals in because he's a bit scared of the Intercessors, because the Intercessors got 2 attacks, whereas the Immortals have only got 1. They're not really geared up for close combat fighting.
You forgot about the flagellant flail.
So the Wraiths really have been shut down a little bit there because they've tried to charge up on the objective. They're not really in charging range of any other units, so that's kind of what they're built for. So they're just kind of sitting around in the middle. Maybe they're having a game of bridge. So at the end of turn 2, the Necrons are going to be scoring 1 extra victory point for holding that objective in their deployment zone. This will bring Guy's total up to 2 victory points to the 1 for me and my Ultramarines.
Moving into Ultramarines turn 3, an Ant is choosing to move his bikers strategically so they are within rapid fire range of the warriors that are up on top of that building, but plenty far away from the Wraiths just to protect them from the inevitable assault if they were too close. And Ant is also choosing to keep his Intercessors and his HQ units stationary so they will benefit from the combat doctrine that he has chosen not to change this turn, so it's still tactical, giving his rapid fire weapons -1 AP. Moving into the shooting phase, Ant is going to shoot his bikes at the warriors. Now because they're half range and rapid fire weapons, they're shooting twice, and each bike has 2 bolt guns. So that's 12 shots coming in, hitting on 3s. So that's 8 shots making their mark, and he'll need 4s to wound. And only 1 fails, so that's 7 wounds the Necrons need to save. So the -1 AP of those bolt weapons will negate the +1 save that the Necrons get for being on that building, so it'll just be their regular 4+ save. And of all of those save rolls, none was successful, so that is 7 Necron warriors dead, leaving just 1 brave soul defending that objective. The Intercessors at the back, they're only really having one viable target for shooting. Ant's going to put all of his shots into the Wraiths. So because they remain stationary and they have rapid fire weapons, they can shoot twice, so that'll be 10 shots coming in at the Wraiths. 6 of those shots hit, 3 wounds caused. Now let's see how many of those I can save. I unfortunately made none of those saves, which would normally kill one of those Wraiths because they have 3 wounds, so I'm going to use one of my 2 remaining command points to try and save one of those Wraiths. Man, I think I'm going to burn these yellow dice. The rooftop Intercessors are firing down on those Immortals. Because they didn't move, they're rapid fire, and obviously minus 2 AP because of the combat doctrines. And 7 of those shots hit, needing 4s to wound. Because of those nearby HQ units, he can reroll that 1, 3 wounds caused. So needing a 5+ to save these, I unfortunately fail every single one. So 3 Immortals bite the dust. So now it's time for the captain to step up to the plate, firing 3 shots, hitting on 2s. Only rolling 1 hit, but those 2 1s can be re-rolled and turned into 2 more hits. So 3 hits in total, needing 4s to wound. He scores all but 1, which he can re-roll, and scores 3 wounds. So I'll need to save all of these, but fortunately they are 0 AP, so 3+. And for once, the yellow dice don't betray me, and I make all of my saves. Yes! It's time for the Lieutenant that's peeking out from behind that building to take his shots against the Immortals as well, hitting on 2s. All of the Lieutenant's shots make their mark, and then onto wounding. Only 1 goes through, but that 1 can be re-rolled, making 2 wounds. And minus 1 AP, I'm going to need 4s to save these. And yellow dice betray me once again. 2 more die. That finishes up the Ultramarine shooting phase, and a pretty devastating one it was as well. Now onto the charge phase. So that group of Intercessors, Lieutenant and Captain are all about 7 inches away from those Immortals. Somebody's got to make a charge. Now these bikes are 11 inches away from that Necron warrior, so it's probably worth trying to roll that high charge to get those sweet, sweet victory points if he manages to pull it off. So before Ant rolls to charge, I need to overwatch that single warrior, and no hits unfortunately, so onto the charge roll. Ant rolls a 5, but because one of the dice is a 4, even if he uses a command point to reroll that 1 to get a 6, he will still not make the charge. So unfortunately, even though it'd be cool, those bikes don't make it in. Ant's going to try and lead the charge with his Intercessors up on that roof, needing a 7-inch charge to hopefully draw some of that overwatch. Fortunately, I roll 2 6s, which means each of those 6s actually cause 3 hits. Strength 5 against toughness 4, so that's 3s to wound, and 4 wounds go through. Now these Intercessors are still in cover, so the minus 1 AP negates the +1 save they get for being on that cover. So a 3+ save needed. One of those Marines actually takes another wound, and because one was already wounded, that means one of them is just dead, leaving 4 Intercessors remaining. And needing a 7-inch charge, the Intercessors just about make it with a roll of an 8. So now those Immortals are, how should we say, occupied, the Captain is now safe to try and get in without facing any overwatch. But unfortunately he fails the charge. Now, the Captain's pretty good in close combat, so Ant's going to use a command point to reroll that 1, and he makes the charge. Bad news for me. Now moving on to Lieutenant, and rolls to make the charge, but he fails. And because Ant's already used a command point in this phase, he can't use another command point to basically do the same thing, so the Lieutenant has to stay behind. So a total of 9 attacks coming in from the Intercessors against the Immortals, so they'll need 3s to hit. And 7 of those hits go through. Now strength 4 against toughness 4 means he'll need 4s to wound. 5 of those attacks go through to wound, so that'll leave me to make 5 3+ armor saves. Lucky purple dice saved the day. Only 1 of those wounds goes through. And the Captain piles in a little bit to try and take out these last 2 remaining Immortals. So 5 attacks hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s. After the re-roll, he manages to get 4 hits. And because the Boltstorm Gauntlets are strength 8 against the toughness 4 of these Immortals, he'll be wounding on 2s. A full house of wounds, and that'll take my save down to a 6+. Not looking good for the Immortals. Lucky purple dice, where are you now? No saves made, so those last 2 Immortals are gone, and that means the squad cannot reanimate, so nicely played by Ant there. So quickly, we want to take care of the morale phase before we move on to Necron's turn 3. So this solitary Necron needs to roll a 3 or less, otherwise he is running away and the squad is gone. On a 4, unfortunately, I don't make it. But I do have 1 command point left, so let's use that and try and save this squad and get them reanimating. And on a 3, I make it, so everything is good, and hopefully I'm not going to lose quite so badly. Now, even though all of Ant's attacks were pretty devastating against my Necrons, he actually didn't score any victory points because he's nowhere near any of the objectives that we set out at the start. So moving on to Necron's turn 3. Can I turn the tide? Maybe not with only 4 models left.
So beginning of turn 3 for the Necrons, and it's time for reanimation protocols. Guy scores 2 5s and a 6, that means 3 are coming back to join their mate over there on that objective marker. Guy's choices here are going to be a lot more limiting than they were when he had his Immortals still left. Guy's going to be going for the victory point win, so he's going to be moving his Wraiths up onto that middle objective to score 2 points. He's also then going to be trying to move his Cryptek over onto the opposing objective marker in my deployment zone so he can score 3 points. So there could be some pretty hefty victory points being scored this turn for Guy. So Guy's going to try and advance his Cryptek up to that objective marker, and the Cryptek's going to need a 4 to make that distance. And unfortunately Guy rolls a 3, so it puts him just outside of holding that objective. And with no command points left, that's unfortunate to see. So Guy's positioned his warriors so that they're all in rapid fire range. That means he's going to be getting 8 shots in at the bikes. So that's 8 shots hitting on 3s and 4 hit the mark. So strength 4 versus toughness 5, and 5's needed to wound. So that's 2 wounds at AP -2. So that's 5's needed to save these wounds. And the dice god is smiling upon me, so I get 2 5s. That's incredibly lucky. So next the Cryptek is going to have a go at my Warlord with the Staff of Light. With Merciless Tyrant trait, he can actually still attack my Warlord and character, even though it's not the closest enemy model. 3 shots hitting on 3s, and all 3 hit, all on 3s. 4's to wound, and only 1 wound goes through. So at AP -2, I'm going to resort to the 4+ save on the Gravis Captain. So I fail the save, I'm going to command point re-roll that. Unfortunately, it still fails. So that's 1 extra damage that goes through to the Gravis Captain. So that's the end of Necron's turn 3, no charges going anywhere. So Guy's going to be scoring 2 points for holding the middle objective and 1 victory point for holding his own objective down in his deployment zone. So that additional 3 victory points is bringing Guy up to a total of 5 victory points versus my lowly 1 victory point.
And now we move on to Ultramarines turn 4, and I think this is going to be the end of a pretty sad story for the Necrons in this game. The Bite Squad is going to move up just outside of 1 inch of the Necron warriors to try and blow them off the map, but also to easily be able to assault them if they survive the shooting phase. The central Intercessor squad are going to be taking all of their rapid fire shots against the Wraiths to try and blow them off that objective. The Lieutenant is going to be moving up onto the building to try and take on the Cryptek, while the Captain and the 4 remaining Intercessors are going to be staying put on the ground to basically blow the Cryptek away before the Lieutenant even gets to do anything. Now, because Ant doesn't really want to kill these warriors in the shooting phase because then he won't be able to charge and get closer to that objective, he's going to use 1 of his bikers to shoot at the Wraiths that are still within 24 inches. So 2 shots going into the Wraiths, needing 3s to hit, and unfortunately, no hits at all. So onto the Necron warriors. 8 shots hitting on 3s, and 5 of them go through. Now Ant will need 4s to wound. 2 wounds going through at AP -1, I'm going to need 5 ups to save. Hey, and a bit of lucky rolling, and I make both of those saves, so all 4 Necrons standing strong. So now it's time for the Intercessors to shoot against the Wraiths, 10 shots coming in, but only 5 hit the spot. So because the Wraiths have a higher toughness than the weapons, they're going to need a 5 to wound, and that only scores 1, which the Wraiths will be able to save with a 3+ invulnerable. So 1 wound down, but the Wraiths are still here, still causing problems. Ant's a little bit concerned that I might be able to win on points here, so he is going to be a bit strategic with his shooting here, choosing to target the Cryptek with the Lieutenant. So 3 shots coming in and 2 hitting, and out of those 2 hits, only 1 causes a wound at -1 AP. Annoyingly, I fail that save, down to 2 wounds on the Cryptek. Trying to finish off the Cryptek, the captain in Gravis armor is going to fire his pistol fists, hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, doesn't even need it, all 3 hit. 2 of those wounds go through at 0 AP, meaning I've got to make 2 4+ armor saves. 2 3s rolled, and no command points available. That means the Cryptek is dead, and Ant gets a victory point for Slay the Warlord. So those 4 remaining Intercessors are going to target the Wraiths, 8 shots coming in, and after all re-rolls because of the nearby HQs, Ant scores 5 hits. And after a little re-roll here and there, Ant scores 3 wounds on the Wraiths. And with a 3+ invulnerable, I fail on one of those dice, taking the already wounded Wraith down to 1 wound. Now that is an accidental tongue twister, try saying that first. Whew. The shooting phase done, we're moving into the Ultramarines charge phase. The only things really in range are the bikes against those warriors, so time for some Overwatch. Rapid fire weapons mean 8 shots coming in, and 2 hits on a 6. Not too bad. 1 wound caused out of those Overwatch shots, and at -2 AP, Ant needs a 5 to save. Ant fails the save, so 1 wound is caused on the biker squad. Now because they're 1 inch away, these bikes are basically automatically in, but Ant rolls a 4, meaning he can move slightly closer to that objective just in case he manages to wipe out all of the Necrons. 2 attacks each for the regular bikers and 3 for the sergeant makes 7 attacks in total. Hitting on 3s, and 5 of those hits go through to the Necrons. Now Ant doesn't get quite as many wounds as he wants, so he uses a command point to reroll 1 of those and scores an extra, making 2 wounds in total. And with no AP, I need 4 pluses to save these, and 1 of them fails, so 1 of those Necron warriors is gone. And now those fearsome warriors get to fight back, with 3 attacks coming in against the bikes, hitting on 3s. All of the attacks hit their mark, but only 1 causes a wound. Now let's see if the bikes can save it. And with a roll of a 1, that bike is dead as it already has 1 wound. Just 2 bikes left. At the end of Ultramarines turn 4, even though Ant gets another victory point for holding the objective that's within his deployment zone, that brings him up to 3 victory points. Now, even if I do basically nothing in turn 4, I still have 5 victory points. So really that means Necrons win the game. I think this just really goes to show that actually in these kind of small, frantic games, almost anything can happen, even at short notice. During the game, it's looked pretty much like the Necrons were going to instantly win, and I think 1 more turn, and honestly, I think the Necrons would have been tabled. But it's only a 4-turn mission, and because of that, the Necrons are victorious. Although it feels slightly like a shallow victory.
So that was much closer this time, which is great. But damn, that Veil of Darkness is really, really, really tricky and such a low point game to try and screen any of our kind of protective units off against it. So that is a really tricky one to actually combat against, because you know that those Immortals are going to be coming in and they're going to be hitting really, really hard. I had a few unlucky rolls, so with the orbital bombardment at the beginning, I thought I'd be able to take a few of the Wraiths out. I probably should have had a go at the Cryptek, if I'm honest. It could have taken down the few wounds. I like to think that the combat doctrines and a mixture of the new bolter rules actually give the Ultramarines a bit more firepower and just give them just that little bit more punch.
That's it for this episode, so I really, really hope you enjoyed this kind of small format battle report. And if you've got anything to say, please leave a comment down below. We love to read them and reply to every single one. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.
Despite outgunning and overpowering the living metal legions of the Mephrit Dynasty, the Ultramarines failed to muster a tactical advantage, losing the precious Archaeotech to a fast-moving, albeit vulnerable Necron force. Had the Primaris Marines been afforded a few precious moments, the tide of this battle would no doubt have been tipped in their favor, but in the furious, unpredictable universe of Warhammer 40,000, nothing can be taken for granted. To be kept informed of other skirmished battles in this galaxy aflame, subscribe to Midwinter Minis. There will be more to come, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.